where he said something interesting, because we've talked about this a ton, about putting the staff together a certain way.
Yeah.
A communicator, a rally guy, a teacher, an overseer, a shepherd, like just putting the puzzle pieces together. Did you catch Shane? Play that same clip one more time. You tell me what you think I'm talking about that caught my eye.
Okay.
I think it's a great time to be back. You got a good group. You got depth. You got young guys, but guys coming in who hungry, need to prove themselves. You got coaches coming in who need to prove themselves. So it's a good opportunity for us to come in and grow together, develop in a room. And you got guys who have really good traits and really good football skills in terms of rushing the passer. So it's all just putting it together and just generating a room that's, just want to be the next up.
What did he throw in there unnecessarily?
I don't know. I don't know what caught your eye there.
You've got a good group of coaches that need to prove themselves.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
See, that right there, and full disclosure, I'm probably hearing what I want to hear, but it wasn't necessary to add.
Sure.
So it's something that has been told to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he's right.
Right? Like, if you look at that, it's knowing what you know now, what I just said,
Yeah,
you go back,
that makes sense.
There was no reason for him to say that.
Because you've got a lot of guys that
I like that. Because you know what have I said for 15 years to guard against this place? This ain't goddamn Disneyland.
Yeah.
Or World. Which one is bigger? World, obviously.
World is bigger.
World's bigger than Land.
Yeah.
This ain't Disney World. So, like stay on your grind.
But it can feel that way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of – I mean, that's the downside of –
It's finding guys with that in their DNA.
Having the resources and the facilities and the chef-cooked meals and all the gear and all the fans and all the social media and all of that. The downside is you can think you've already made it.
And look who he's brought in to thinsulate themselves. Two guys. When I say Coach Holgerson and Coach Snow will be two guys that can't not say, there is no real filter.
Yeah.
They're just old, savvy, grizzled vets. I don't mean old necessarily in terms of age.
No, but like experienced.
Just
seen a lot of stuff.
Just seen too much to play the game.
Also, there are a couple of guys that come off to me as just not interested in all the stuff.
Yep.
Right? They come off as just like, hey, I'm here to coach ball.
Yep.
Like, how often do you have a coach that would come in his mid-60s last year, 65, 66, 67, whatever he is, and go, I didn't really know what the job was. I just came in to help.
Yeah.
Like, that's a guy that just wants to coach ball.
Yep.
Because how many dudes do you know that would take a job, regardless of age, but especially when you don't need to, that they don't know what the job is, they don't know what it entails. They're just like, I'm just here to coach ball.
He's just – I think we're going to really, really like him. And it's not like he's a great – he's a good orator, right? I mean –
he was fine.
But it's not like –
he was a Rhule.
So it's not – yeah, it's not his – It's not the.
He's not charismatic.
It's not the. I was going to say it's not the charisma.
Yeah,
it's just what he says. He's just very matter of fact, and the Rolodex of history. I think in terms of what he's seen, how he just immediately recalls. See, I geek out over stuff like this when he says, "Gosh, you know what? Well, they gave us a small guy, and we had a small guy on the other side, so we had to go to a 5 front because we got to be able to stop the run."
Yeah.
Immediately, I'm like, hand me the paper towel. I got to dap up. Because those are the things, the game within the game and adjusting about how you still need to be able to do. Or he's like, man, I've watched this college game the last handful of years. You know what the Big Ten is? Big Ten is 2-back run game. It's 1-back passing game. That's pretty I'm used to that. This is what I think we can do. Hey, we're really good on first and second down. Let's ramp up third down. What killed Nebraska last year? Third down. But what did Coach Rhule say in the offseason on why the defensive coordinator thing was so tough to change? Because he liked a lot of the stuff they did from a preparation standpoint. So if you don't think that's intentional, I don't know what to tell you.
No, it has to be. I mean,
they're putting this thing together in a way that's going to give themselves a chance.
I also like you've got basically a mix of experienced guys that just want to coach ball and young guys that have something to prove, right? A lot of guys that shouldn't get distracted by all the twinkling lights.
And my man, he said, hey, make no mistake about it. This is blank's defense.
John Butler's defense.
And he put to bed the whole nonsense about the overseeing and Tony and not like that wasn't it.
No.
That wasn't it. And I said that at the like don't go doing that.
Sometimes we're doing too much. There was some news last night.
There was.
The captain of the Enterprise got hired by Nebraska.
What's interesting about this?
What's that?
Do you remember when I told you I was in New York and I'm just watching guys work, and some guys that I thought I was going to see more like engaged from a football capacity because that's what they had been doing.
Mm-hmm.
We're kind of behind the scenes with like portaling and contracts and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, this is real time. And I told you, I'm like, they're going to have to rebuild that whole department.
Yeah. Which I maybe I was wrong, but that was sort of my assumption all along with Sean Patton. Like, he very much always struck me more as
the guy that I affectionately dubbed Alan Greenspan.
Yeah, as a business guy as opposed to a football guy. Not to say he doesn't know football, right? But he always, with his background, when we talked to him on the show, he very much struck me as a business, analytical, that type of guy.
He is very good with talent eval too, though. So I'll throw that in.
Totally fair, right? But it really felt to me like his wheelhouse was some of the other front office-y type stuff. And so I just sort of always assumed they would bring another person in sort of a pro player personnel role, the way they just did with Pat Stewart from the Patriots, and they moved Patton over to assistant AD for innovations,
which is
right in his wheelhouse.
Yeah,
I mean, like, that's his sweet spot. Right now, he's still going to deal with like contract negotiations and salary cap things and stuff like that.
But you let Stewart do contracts, and that kind of the fiscal numbers to know right where you're at.
Yeah, and to kind of have, I think, to me, I look at him as like a roster management type guy.
Yeah.
To be like, okay.
And he also this is total speculation, but I'm thinking he probably allows you to have like the Troy Vincent Juniors of the world.
Yeah.
And Keith Williams of the world. Like that, they can operate in that window.
Yep. And not have to worry as much about
Stewart,
some of the other stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it takes...
So that allows you to kind of put together a different department on the fly.
Yes. I think it also allows Coach Rhule to worry less about that stuff. Yeah. Obviously, he's going to be involved. Has to be. But I do think there's going to be... And we've seen this across football, right? Or across college football where you're hiring GMs and stuff. Because the roster management of it all, if we're moving to more of an NFL model, most NFL head coaches don't deal with that.
Yeah.
Like, they're involved. They have the discussions. But the GM, it's the vice president, it's whoever dealing with those things. That's going to be Patton and Stewart from what it looks like. And I think that makes a lot of sense because you don't want Rhule to have to be worrying about, well, okay, I need 18 offensive linemen and I need, I need 22 defensive backs. And like, that's going to be somebody else's job.
He kind of blew through it a couple of pressers ago, but remember when he said, we got coaches that are going to have that. I'm going to allow them to make decisions on their room, on their personnel room.
Yeah. Because they're going to have a better feel for how many guys they need, what types of guys they need, how much you can take a flyer on a fresh incoming freshman that maybe you like their frame on that you would have taken a flyer on 2 years ago. You're like, okay, I've actually got room in my position group for that guy as opposed to.
But it's very interesting to hear Phil Simpson talk about his room the way that he did.
He was a little evasive, I think, because somebody asked him who's in your room.
Well, they try to pin him down like that. Just don't do that. Because number one, it's too early.
Okay.
Number two, it's pretty fluid. Like, because you don't really know what scheme you're going to run yet.
So I get that, but I do think part of it, like, to me, I thought it was a genuine question. I didn't think they were trying
That's fine.
I think they were trying to trap him.
If I'm a coach, I'm not answering.
That's fine. I also think I don't know that we have a great, like, media fan in general. I don't know that we have a great feel on which guys are jacks versus which guys are linebackers versus which guys are edge defensive linemen, which is fine.
That's a good point.
And you
just want to know.
Yeah, I think genuinely people are like, okay, so
what's the difference between a jack and a Sutton? You could ask that question.
Yeah, like what?
Because they're not going to get player specific really.
And that's fine. But I think that was maybe I'm giving too much credit here. I think that was the core of the question is like, hey, which guys or body types?
You're probably right, general most times, except for you were getting specifics about Mav and McCullough.
Yeah, I don't know that it was asked the right way.
But I do no, and I'm not talking about that question. I'm talking about in its totality,
Yeah.
when you get Simpson's response,
Yeah.
it's in order. The question was asked whenever the order
About
it was.
Willis, or about
because
McGahee,
the first couple of questions about the room, it was already implied who was in the room.
Yeah.
They didn't say who. He didn't say
Yeah.
who was in the room.
Yeah.
He's like, well, because I think they were kind of fact finding.
Mhm.
Well, Phil, I mean, he's smart. Like, he's well versed too.
Yeah.
So he entertained a little.
Yeah,
Hey, Matt, this.
He gave the two guys that they mentioned, then he added in McCullough, was working there right now.
Yeah.
He didn't say he was going to stay there. I do think there is.
So, like, there's some gamesmanship in that.
For
right?
sure.
Yeah.
I also think to be fair, I thought it was a fair question. I also didn't expect him to give very many more names.
Yeah. So the fair or foul isn't what I'm saying.
Sure.
I'm not saying whether it was a fair question.
Yeah.
I'm saying when he's answering the question, he's letting you know. Oh, this is what I was going to say. We got some developmental guys that I like. We have some guys that have this body type. We have guys that are this style that I like. So even in his answer, I still got a developmental piece, because I think we're afraid a little bit that the development is out the window
with the smaller roster.
But it's not.
No.
And you can tell by the guys, he has his X's and O's guy. But he also has this nice blend of developers. You need an Addison Williams. You need a Daikiel Shorts. You have a Snow. You have a Holgerson. And you have a Butler who still likes to teach, but at least now he gets to roam a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I kind of think that's important.
Yeah. I do think it was really interesting when Simpson talks about, hey, like before, like I know I'm the edge guy, so we all think about pass rushing. Nobody even gets to pass rush until they can stop the run.
Yeah.
Like I thought that was a really interesting.
Got to earn the right.
Well, and it kind of goes back to what Ryan Roberts was talking about too. Is like you build on foundation, right? So it's like, hey, you can pass rush all day long. If you can't stop the run, you're not getting on the field.
I told you the conversation I had with CJ, right?
Yeah.
I just kind of want to go back to rushing the passer. Oh man, we're in an odd front.
Yeah. You don't get to do that until you do the other stuff.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
We got to stop the run first.
You'll get the rest of the passer when it's good in time. The reason I asked Brunts about that Phil Snow question with the Carolina stuff, because I thought it was a pretty big departure from the way we've heard Rhule talk about the time in Carolina, right? Like that's why it caught me off guard, because he was pretty adamant, like, oh no, if you had given us enough time, even with the weird COVID circumstances, we'd have won there. And he went as far as to say, like, hey, even after they fired us, like, you don't think the foundation that we set led to the 7 wins that they had that year, which is dramatically more than they've had pretty much any other time in Carolina in recent memory? Like, that to me was it was a little jarring, because we really haven't heard Coach Rhule talk about the time in Carolina that way at all.
Yeah, and he's kind of moved on. I think it's just their personalities.
For sure.
That's a good what's the word I'm looking for? Synopsis or observation.
Oh, between the two?
Between the two, because I think it's both of their personalities.
Yeah.
You know, Phil is he's experienced, he's kind of a veteran. He's savvy. He's kind of a storyteller, but he's very reflective.
It also feels like
he's very, very reflective. So it's kind of like what he said about, in the same vein but different. It's kind of what he said about studying first through third down. Hey, really good on first and second down. I like this, this, and this. What we need to do on third down is kind of elevate this, where, you know, we want to show movement in the box, kind of radar. We want to mug guys. We want to show mug, which, again, are things that I like.
Yeah.
Right, because it's just football, and he's actually looking at something in game planning.
Yeah.
But he's also acknowledging what his coach said to us during the whole defensive coordinator search.
Yeah, however many months ago.
I like a lot of what we're doing. This is what's going to make this so hard for me. I don't want to change a ton in terms of our preparation. I want an answer guy.
It's actually easier when you want to throw everything out, right?
Right? So it's just,
when you're making a change,
yeah,
it's easier when you don't like what you're doing.
So I like the fact that there's consistency in that message, because it panned out that way.
Yeah.
Which was why I was so bothered about what we thought about Butler. I'm like, really, guys?
I think so. This is a very fan thing, right? We just wanted to get excited about a name. That's all it was. Yeah. It's not about John Butler, really. We wanted to get excited about a name, and I get it. But like, I don't know. Like, I have no way of knowing if Simons from SMU is a better defensive coordinator than Butler is. I have no idea. I really don't. And I think anybody being honest with you as a fan would tell you the exact same thing. There's some guys, I don't know if any of them were on the table, but there's some guys you could look around the country and be like, yeah, that guy's, I like his experience. I like his track record. He probably would have been a better choice. I don't know if any of those guys were on the table, right? I just don't. Like, if you go and hire Al Golden, maybe you feel really good about that, right? Coming off a Broyles Award, you saw the defense that Notre Dame put together. You're like, oh, man, like Al Golden, no-brainer, sure. But a year ago, if Tony White had left, and we're like, oh, we just got this guy who's an active
I know.
coach with the Buffalo Bills. He's up for the Buffalo Bills defensive coordinator job, and he takes the Nebraska defensive coordinator job instead. We'd have been thrilled out of our minds.
Yeah, that's really the only thing that
it's the perspective.
It wasn't
right?
even necessarily about defending Butler because I don't know enough yet.
It's just the perspective of it.
You know, I'm still fact finding and
well, that's the truth. We don't know. We don't know if it's going to work or not, but we also don't know if Simons, like that's the name that always comes up.
I think
Simons.
I think the thing I'm most excited about is we can't see it yet, but if you listen. And it's not that hard because he says it almost in every sort of presser about what he wants and what he's trying to build. The hires fit.
Yeah.
That's all I know.
They all fit together.
Like, oh, yeah, I can see this and this, and this guy's going to do this. Like, you can see his words actually come into fruition with the hires. That's just like when he says in passing, getting off the bus, going to Fordham, I'm like, hey, where's such and such and such and such? Oh, man. You know, these protocols are crazy. We got to set up kind of these dinners and host these guys when we get back to Lincoln. I sure could use those guys on the field. I'm going to have to redo this whole NIL deal if they don't change the calendar with my department. Just in passing.
Yeah.
It's exactly what he did.
Yeah, that's exactly what
It's exactly what we're seeing right now.
With the hires.
Yes.
With the GM and the ace assistant.
And so when Brunt says, man, you can tell like these guys have specific things that they're supposed to take care of. And then everybody will get better because you can accentuate your strengths.
Yeah.
Right? You can let Keith, be the guru. You can let Keith Williams do Keith Williams things. You can let Troy Vincent Jr. do Troy Vincent things.
You can let Patton be Patton.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you heard how about how Simpson quietly wove in, with Corey and Kristen, when it comes to nutrition and putting on what their frames can carry and these guys are all saying the same thing.
Yeah, everybody's on the same page.
The same thing.
So what's funny
to me?
Yeah.
That's exciting. That's why I was surprised to hear you say you liked Shorts the best yesterday, but I understand why. It's not that I didn't. It's just for vastly different reasons than what I was listening for.
What were you listening for?
Continuity.
Sure. With within the staff, within
what do they need? Right?
Yeah.
So I was kind of skewed,
So Phil Simpson was probably the most continuity.
Yes.
Snow was kind of the most confident, reflective. And then I thought Shorts was sort of the most compelling to listen to.
Yeah.
Out of the three guys. Now, Snow is a good storyteller, and he, there's a lot there.
You could tell that Shorts was a guy that has been groomed for this moment.
Yeah. He looked like he felt ready.
A natural, yeah.
Like he looked comfortable. I think that's what I was seeing
he's confident.
Yeah, he seemed like secure with himself, which I like. But it was, I think the other thing we talk about, besides just getting excited for a name as a fan base, we also think about hires mostly in a vacuum. I think we think about, okay, is this a good D-line coach or not? Is this a good defensive backs coach or not? Is this a good running backs coach or not? We don't think about it in the scheme of a workplace because we don't really think about college football or coaching staffs in general as workplaces, right? They are. This is, you're basically dealing with an office workplace. You're around these guys a lot. You have to deal with each other all the time. Like interpersonal relationships matter. Covering up for each other's strengths and weaknesses matter. I don't know that we think about that a lot when we're looking at, I wish they would have gone out and gotten this guy. It's like, well, maybe that guy's hard to work with. Like maybe, like we've heard that with coaches a lot. Like Rich.
So presence, you'll take Shorts.
Yeah, I just liked the way he came off.
Experience and knowledge, kind of you'll take
Snow.
And relationally, you'll take Simpson?
Yeah, I think so.
That's about what they need.
So
that's about what they need.
The reason I started coming around on this is when they hired Butler and Snow basically simultaneously, right? Because my big concern about Butler was I would have liked somebody with more recent coordinator experience in college, right? That's what I wanted out of the hire. Now, am I right? I have no idea, but that's what I wanted out of the hire. But then when you marry that with Phil Snow, who's got all the experience in the world, all of a sudden that hire feels vastly different to me. If you hire John Butler without Phil Snow, I probably still have more consternation. You hire them together, I go, oh, that makes sense.
Were you momentarily like, with the fact that Addison Williams has had coordinating experience?
Yeah, I like that too.
And he's kind of the young relational guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's pretty strategic.
And let's not forget, Coach Rhule also has defensive coordinating experience. Yeah. Like, you've got 4 guys now on staff with coordinating experience on that side of the football. That matters. But I also think you have to be really strategic, because you don't have 4 guys that I think all want to be the defensive coordinator at Nebraska right now. That also really matters, right? John Butler wants to be the defensive coordinator at Nebraska right now. Phil Snow doesn't.
Yeah, you can't hire guys that want your job unless they tell you ahead of time.
Yeah, unless they're upfront about it, right? Unless there's a transparency there. But like, Phil Snow doesn't want John Butler's job. Addison Williams maybe does, but I don't think he's gunning for it. And obviously Matt Rhule doesn't want that job. So you're dealing with vastly different dynamics with 4 guys that have been defensive coordinators, and that can be really interesting, and I think can sort of compound like a sum is greater than the parts situation on the defensive staff. And that's not to say the parts are even bad.
I can't stress how important it is for these guys this year, the players, to see consistency and the modeled behavior. Like, it's always important, but it's critical this year because you've added some new faces. And remember, Coach Rhule has kind of left himself no real wiggle room to be critiqued. Like, he can't, and I don't know if he doesn't strike me as the type of dude that's going to make excuses, because he hasn't so far. But he's taken away a lot of the variables. So now we just get to watch the coaching.
Yeah.
Right? We know it's year 3. We know the roster's kind of had an overhaul. You got a nice blend of young and new. You kind of got the staff you wanted, because most coaches will tell you it takes 4 or 5 years to get your real staff.
Sure. Availability versus who you can get at what time.
Versus you kind of have to tinker and see what works, too.
Yeah, yeah. And you're dealing with chemistry and people and interpersonal relationships. And
the landscape changed, too. Like,
the landscape of college football changed dramatically.
Who gave the moving ground analogy? Was it BC? This is somebody smart.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was yesterday.
Getting your feet on moving ground or something like that. Like, that's really what's happened navigating this college football deal. So, I don't know how it's going to work. I just like the conviction. Like, you can tell there's a plan.
And they're giving themselves a chance. That's the big thing, right? They're giving themselves a chance.
That's a lot better than
the alternative.
Or it not sticking.
Yeah.
Like it's just throwing it at the wall. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's because if let's just say, for instance, like if Barthel leaves, you would have said, because we're kind of contrarians, some would have maybe been happy, but we'd have been like, oh man, the running game was starting to come together.
Yeah.
Like, that's how we would have looked at it.
When you married Barthel with Holgerson's offense, it started to look.
That kind of stuff matters.
It does matter. I mean, I used this example before, but
it's why Dana likes Sat as coaching the tight ends next to Donnie, because of how well they work together.
Well, and let's not forget how much different, with largely the same guys, Donnie's offensive line looked with one offensive coordinator versus another, going from Whipple to Satterfield from year 1 to year 2.